Please pause.
Yes.
Okay, there's a feature that I haven't done anything with yet, but you can see it in this clip. Can I come up?
Yeah.
Okay. This is something that a friend of mine who's in the military and expert in explosives and things, he pointed this out on a different thing. It wasn't very clear, but I saw it on this. So go ahead, play it.
Did you go to stop at a certain point?
Yeah,
Okay, I'm sure I saw that.
if you're able to.
Let me practice.
What you're going to see is here's all this debris falling, and here's one that's shooting out ahead of everything else. How does it gain that extra speed? If it fell from the same place, how does one piece get way out ahead of everything else?
Now let's look at the collapse of the Twin Towers.
We'll just play the whole thing straight through.
I'm gonna have to, but now I gotta go through the slideshow.
Sorry.
That's okay.
Get a good review.
So I went down to the scene and we set up headquarters set sidewalk on the street, which is there included.
Now, next.
I guess I don't know how to stop this. Does
Well,
anybody?
just play it. I think now that I've
Now
described
let's look at
it.
the collapse of the Twin Towers.
Yeah. It's like it just took off like a jet.
It fell before the free fall. It fell faster than the free fall.
Well, I haven't measured that, but the point is, here's everything else, and it just accelerates.
The sequence running
Yeah, he's saying-
in war as degrees from
He's saying that's typical of
damage is not contained.
This is the you see, guys, that's fine.
What kind of energy enabled this? Here, a strong steel was formed 400 feet, wedging itself deep into the World Financial Center on Besant Street. A female photographer taking pictures of Ground Zero wondered why so many steel beams were jutting from neighborhood buildings. What shot pieces of the towers all the way across the street?
Okay, this guy was a total skeptic. I mean, he totally believed the government. He thought what I was saying was nuts. I said, "Have you ever seen these things?" So I took him in, and what I actually showed him was that North Tower coming down that I narrated, right? And there was a beam in there that he latched onto. He was an instant convert to that this is an explosion. And the thing that he saw was that the piece that's already falling, you can actually see there's a lot of white smoke, and it takes off, and it's accelerated. And this one's clearer of the same type of phenomenon. And he said that's absolutely typical of when you have these explosions, and it's unexploded material that explodes and acts like it makes something act like a rocket, so it shoots out. Anyway, I haven't really narrated that or done anything with that yet, because I don't know enough about the phenomena, but that was the thing that, it was so weird. He was, like, he's a Republican, he's very right-wing, and he thought I was nuts. Until he saw that, he immediately said, this is an explosion.
Well, that's why I suggest it's explosive hardware in the construction of the building.
Okay, I think that is not plausible. That's my view, but whatever.
Okay, now we're coming to the strange case of WTC-7. As if the foregoing wasn't strange enough.
Well, keep seeing hard shots. Now, here we're going to show you a video picture of the collapse itself. Now we're going to video of the collapse of the building.
Good job, Paul.
Amazing, incredible picture work. For the third time today, reminiscent of those pictures we've already seen today. Before. Not only did this was destroyed by world-class guns, but knock it down.
That was the only time Dan Rather ever said that.
Is that actual speed?
Yeah.
The movie's a little jumpy.
Yeah.
That's fast.
Well, the building came down in about 6.6 seconds, and free fall, if the whole building were to come down under free fall, it would be about 6 seconds. So, yeah, it came down fast. In fact, we're going to get into that in a bit there. It came down very fast.
What did Dan Ruther say? I couldn't hear him.
He said that it looked a lot like a controlled demolition.
The third time today.
Yes. Here is the NIST model. Now watch the top of this. As the top comes down, see how it twists in on itself and crumples in? That's actually what you would expect, but that's not what we saw. We saw the whole thing come down straight, evenly symmetrical, straight line across. I mean, that, if you had a billiard ball on that thing, it wouldn't have rolled to one side or the other. It would have just kept coming down. So even their own model doesn't match up. Of course, this is all NIST produced for the WTC7 report. Essentially, was this black box model that they won't let us see. They won't let us see what kind of inputs they put into the model. Architects and engineers from Island of Truth have filed Freedom of Information Act requests to try and get the model so we can analyze it, so we can see. I mean, you can tweak a model to make it do whatever you want. You can make big slide with the model if you want. It's all about, boundary conditions and starting conditions and different things like that. So the fact that they can make something like this after studying it for 6 years is not that impressive.
This building is about to be destroyed in what is called a controlled demolition. Buildings do not do this spontaneously. Here is another example of a controlled demolition. The initial charges are spaced about 1 second apart. And you can see that each section begins falling separately. Successful demolitions require that all structural support columns collapse at virtually the same time. If they don't, or if something else goes wrong, the result will look something like this.
I'd really like to know the rest of the story. Like, how did they go back in down, bring that building down? I wanted you to take a look at that one in particular because that addresses the primary theory that was put forth by Bazant et al. And I believe their first paper was published 2 days after 9/11. Kind of reminds me of the paper Jack was put ready to go. And their theory is that the upper section fell 1 floor or maybe more and hit the lower section. And then with all kinds of fancy partial differential equations, they proved beyond a shadow of a doubt that the rest of the building would have to collapse as a result. And then once it collapsed, then the upper section would collapse once it reached the ground. And it's really amazing. When they get done, they've got their little curve with their little error bars, and boy, the curve from the videos on just fits right nicely in there. I mean, it's like these guys are geniuses. A couple problems. One, the upper story you saw was exploding. It wasn't coming down as a single block on top of the lower thing. And even in their own report, they show the acceleration of this upper block. Well, you would expect if this upper block hits the lower block, that you would see a rapid deceleration of that upper block. Like I'm fond of saying, if I swing my hammer and it doesn't rapidly decelerate, it means I missed. So you don't see that rapid deceleration. And plus, as the building is coming down the towers did not come down at free fall, but they came down pretty darn fast, and a big percentage of free fall. That means that that chunk of mass was not exerting its, if it's just standing still, it's got its mass times the acceleration of gravity, and it's pushing down the lower building. But if it's falling at some acceleration, then that means that it's pushing down less than it would if it was just standing still. I say this a little bit better later on, but the building is failing under a load that's less than what it was supporting for 30 years. But that's what Bazant has to say about all this. But they are very impressive with their partial differential equation. I gotta say, I'm pretty intimidated. Okay, now we're going to go to